Season 8 of Friendship is Magic has been off to a fairly rocky start, and sadly the end to that start is not yet in sight. Yet, just a minor heads up, I really did not like this episode. In fact, Fake It Till You Make It is, in my honest opinion, the worst Fluttershy episode in the entire show. So bear with me as I tear this trash apart. To start, the premise makes absolutely no sense. Rarity is running out of time, and she needs someone else to run her boutique for her in Manhattan because it's supposed to be really busy at this time of the year. The episode then goes on to show just how many ponies Rarity approached to help her, but there is one pony that I was thinking about ever since I first saw this episode that I was baffled was not even mentioned throughout the entire thing. The Saddle Row employees and Sassy Saddles all have alibis, since they were with Rarity at the time of the show actually going on. But one pony who I do not know for the life of me why she was not even considered is Coco Pamel. If I remember correctly, Coco was Rarity's original pick to handle Saddle Row back in the Saddle Row review. The only reason she wasn't able to actually do anything there was because she was sick. But Fake It Till You Make It doesn't even try to explain why Coco wasn't even considered. It is an impossible to ignore plot hole. And it entirely undermines why it was Fluttershy who was needed for this job. Just like that, the premise of this episode is dead on arrival. Especially since not only is it just incredibly miserly on Rarity's part to get a friend to do this job for her, but this is freaking retail, one of the most stressful environments you could ever find yourself in. And you want Fluttershy to do it, a pony with absolutely zero formal training, a generally poor track record when trying to stand up for herself, and according to this episode, little to no experience of anything apparel related. Despite adequately displaying sewing knowledge as far back as Season 5's Canterlot Boutique, if not Season 1 suited for success. And you know what's really freaking crazy too? Rarity reached out to the Kingdom Crusaders for help. If those three were on the table and they said no, why not any of the young six? Can't teenagers get jobs too? This unironically would have been an excellent time to give Ocellus a starring role in the show. She's a changeling, and will be entirely capable of copying appearances and being able to do the exact same gimmick that Fluttershy relied on. I don't get it. Why are you introducing all these new characters with all of these fascinating new gimmicks to them, and you're not using them? It's the lowest hanging possible fruit, and you managed to miss it. All to instead give us basically a retreading of Honest Apple. Except give Honest Apple this. Applejack actually ended up being a decent fashion critic. Fluttershy, I have no idea what they were thinking with this episode and her characterization. First of all, Fluttershy acts as if she's never acted before. That is dead wrong. She's been acting as early as Herf Swarming Eve. And by that same token, testing 1 2 3, since she had to act to help teach Rainbow Dash. Not only has she acted before, she's acted professionally before. So the idea that Fluttershy has never acted before is a massive continuity error. And as far as acting goes while she's thinking on her feet, that is something that she's tried and failed to do before in putting your hoof down. You know, the episode that was entirely predicated on learning how to stand your ground without coming up as unpleasant. No, I wish I was done, but I'm not done yet. Just like Honest Apple, this is a very repetitive episode. Except somehow this episode had worse pacing than Honest Apple. Since even that episode took some time before Applejack became legitimately unpleasant. In Fake It Till You Make It, once all of Fluttershy's personalities have all been established, it takes very little time for her to become downright unbearable. And honestly, outside of the first personality established, it feels like Fluttershy is making things way too complicated for herself. I could see Fluttershy's more uptight personality working fine considering the circumstances surrounding it being involved, but the customers that prompted her to bring out her more hippie and goth acts, they were actually fairly reasonable by comparison. So it really feels like this episode was just an excuse to dress Fluttershy up. Which, for a show that's basically an overglorified toy commercial, it makes me really long for the subtlety in the previous episodes. At least they tried to be sneaky about it. It all just escalates way too fast, and it feels downright unnatural. Couple that with how samey some of the customers feel, with how some of the customers even are just straight up repeats. And this just comes off as a very lazy episode, even for Season 8 standards. By the way, the fact that Fluttershy actually says woke unironically in this episode, I do not exaggerate when I say I wanted to slam a table. There's also just a bunch of scenes that feel entirely pointless to be featured in this episode. Like this one scene where we're watching Rarity walking down the street, and she overhears these ponies that are walking to her boutique, and they're talking about how they're going to act so hostile if the business isn't up to par. And like, A, this is highly unnatural dialogue, and B, why is Rarity walking so freaking slowly as it's going on? I thought she was in a rush to get to the train. I mean, yeah, she does start running, but that's only after she's assured that Fluttershy has everything under control. I don't get it. Are you in a rush or not, Rarity? If you are in a rush, then act like it, and act like it consistently. Another thing that really bothered me is when the raccoons get shooed out of the boutique. They're all the same, able to get an audience of Twilight, and all of a sudden, all of the main 6 are available to help Fluttershy out of her act. Even though by all accounts, they should be too busy to. You might think I'm nitpicking, but I don't think that needing to help Fluttershy here is really a sufficient reason for them to drop what they were all doing. They all have lives of their own, they don't have time to just skip out on that, and they can't really drop what they're doing without a really good reason. Having them just drop everything to go and do whatever they can to help out just makes the episode establishing them being too busy earlier arbitrary. It's the same problem a Bird in the Hoof had. At least limit the interference to only Twilight, since she was the one who was originally approached, and it isn't like any of the other main 6 did anything anyway. Oh, and I freaking love the fact that Rarity up and admits that she'd sooner trust her own friends to run her boutique over the assistants that already regularly do that. But I guess there's a lot of profit to be found in nepotism, isn't that right? Oh my god, how is Season 8 start this bad? About the only real positive I have for this episode is that the alternative identities is actually a pretty fun concept. But even then, it's not very original considering Newbie Dash did something super similar as a gag, and it was actually a lot funnier there because the Wonderbolt's reactions were fun to see. Beyond that, this episode is flooded with character derailment, with Fluttershy herself becoming extremely regressive as a result. And there's no shortage of continuity errors either, to the point where I'm legitimately questioning whether or not the writer for this episode actually watched the show he was writing for. And yes, I am aware that a lot of writers for this show are freelance writers. This show didn't really have a consistent writing team for it, which is honestly a crying shame. Because sometimes you get episodes like this, where there are problems so obvious that it leaves me scratching my head as to how anyone can actually miss them. I legitimately cannot think of a single redeeming quality for this episode. It is up there with the worst of the entire show. Awful characterization of Fluttershy, complete failure to honor continuity, repetitive and tedious storytelling, absolutely cringe dialogue in several parts, a largely redundant moral that essentially boils down to be yourself, and worst of all, the lack of even a sniff of Coco Pamel completely tanked this episode. Regardless, what did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? If you want to get a plushie of Fluttershy wearing one of these clothes, let me know in the comments down below. And I'll see you next time for, I guess, Granny's Gone Wild. Until next time, thank you for watching.